I hear the click of the lipstick tube like a small accusation. I press the color to my lips slowly, deliberately, as if the motion itself can steady whatever tremor lives inside me. Red. Marcus' favorite shade. The one he said made me look formidable. I repeat that compliment to myself like a prayer, because prayers are the only things that keep my hands from shaking. I don't look at David in the mirror. If I meet his eyes, the truth sitting between us will find the words to crawl out. Don't wait up, David, I say, because it's easier than explaining what I am becoming. This could run late. Very late. Saying it softens nothing. Saying it hardens something in me. Saying it aligns me with the part of my life that rewards performance and punishes doubt. I taste the lipstick on my teeth when I smile, and for an instant I allow myself a small, guilty ember of pleasure. Someone commented on my dress last week. Marcus complimented my pitch. Catherine smiled in a way that felt approving rather than calculating. I tell myself I deserve the approval. I tell myself ambition is noble. I tell myself that the pretense of being someone powerful is not the same as being corrupt. I lie to myself smoothly, the way I used to tell David that our investments were a hobby and not the fortress they became. The house looks like it should be a refuge. Marble counters, perfectly polished surfaces, the kind of overpriced decor that promises stability. But I know how things rot from the inside. I can see the tiny web of compromise I stepped into. The way each concession, each, of course, to Marcus' requests, has anchored me more tightly. I tidy my hair, adjust the dress he bought me, and for a breath, I imagine I'm stepping into a role I was always meant to play. He asks about the dress like it's a casual observation. New dress? He asks, and the syllables feel like knives because his voice is curious in a way I misread for attention. I should have been honest. I should have said nothing. Instead, the name slips out of my mouth like a fragile thing. Marcus bought it for me. I watch his face in the mirror. His hurt is a small thing, but honest, and I lie to myself, loudly enough to drown out the tremor that threatens to make me tell the truth. I tell myself Marcus bought it because he thought I should look the part for a presentation. I tell myself presentation night is when careers change. I tell myself I was chosen for a reason. The word chosen tastes sweet and dangerous. I swallow until it feels like an ember. When I leave, the sound of the Bentley is a promise and a threat all at once. It purrs like a cat that knows its claws. I slide into the passenger seat and lean over to kiss Marcus on the cheek or the mouth. I can't tell anymore and, frankly, I do not want to distinguish. The question of whether it was cheek or mouth matters to no one but me. The act of leaning and consenting to his proximity is the pact I signed when I allowed the mentorship to become something else. I tell myself it was mentorship. I tell myself Catherine had said I had potential, that mentorship needed polish. I tell myself I am building a future. I tell myself 1,000 things that are not true, and the lies keep me warmed for a moment. At the presentation, Marcus brags quietly to people he thinks matter. He introduces me as someone who knows how to get things done, which feels like a weapon in my hands. I watch the room fill with faces that could help me. I let their nods fatten my sense of worth. Afterwards, as champagne fumes settle like dimples of light, I feel both guilty and buzzed, like someone who has broken a rule and found out she can get away with it. When I get home hours later, I listen for the rhythm of David's breathing in our bed and I hope, stupidly, that he won't sense the different brand of cologne. The truth is, I don't want him to look at me the way he used to, soft and indulgent, because that tenderness is a mirror I can no longer reconcile with the woman stepping out of Marcus' car. He mumbles, "Good presentation," as if he believes me when I say I am stretched thin by work, and the lie tastes odd on my tongue because I know how tame his evenings are and how he values order in a way I have come to find suffocating. I tell myself I can compartmentalize. I tell myself honesty would ruin everything. I tell myself David will understand later. I tell myself so many versions of survival that at some point the story of a woman who wants more feels like an argument with the woman I used to be. I smooth my dress, turn away from the bed, and pretend sleep is possible. 3 in the morning is when the mask slips. He comes home late, the scent of cologne foreign to me, and I wait for the cover story he's taught me to expect. He slides into bed like a practiced actor. He says, very productive, in a whisper that wants to let the world believe everything is normal. I stare at the ceiling and feel the weight of the night settle in my chest like a stone. If I'm honest, if I allow myself to breathe past the rituals, I'd say the man in the bed feels smaller than the man I've been trying to become, and that it terrifies me more than betrayal or discovery ever could. I leave before he wakes. It's the easiest lie, a note about team building pressed between pages of a calendar I never open. I tell myself I deserve an opportunity, that the world we built together can survive this. The truth is, the world I want and the life I want figure differently on the scale than the comfortable safety David offers. Comfort feels like a slow erosion when I'm hungry for recognition, for the gasps of admiration that come from rooms where people can change your life with a handshake. The messages start like a field of small, neat flowers, and then the roots twist. Catherine's texts are clinical, efficient. Make sure Jennifer and Lisa know what to wear or what not to wear. Marcus writes casually about special presentations that turn into private favors and whispered recommendations. I tell myself this is just office politics at its worst, and yet the language starts to strip me of dignity. David's getting suspicious. Vanessa, me, sends to Catherine, and I cannot bear the way my name is typed into a conversation, as if I were a variable to be managed. The reply is colder than the incensed heat of betrayal. Handle it, or we handle it for you. There is a part of me that understands power as an arithmetic, and the calculation is grotesque. It reduces people to assets and liabilities, what they can facilitate, and what they will cost. In that arithmetic, I had volunteered as collateral. I had become part of a ledger. I had believed myself entitled to that trade because Marcus had promised futures, because Catherine had smiled like a benefactor. And then they spoke of David as if he were a line item that could be optimized or eliminated. I do not think I heard the words as a betrayal at the first. I heard them as a threat that required machinery to fix. I told myself I could manage him, that I could keep our home and have his career, and that the calculus would work out. But the calculus is treacherous when the variables are human. I did not account for the gravity of David's silence or the method of his patience. I did not account for the way quiet men can be terrifying when they decide the rules are broken. One night, he did what I had always imagined he would not. He opened my laptop. He saw the messages with the casual cruelty that had made my stomach flip months ago. He frowned and moved like someone who had been rereading a book that suddenly contained a map to a trap. He did not shout. He did not tear the house apart. He took screenshots, every single message, and then he went to work in a way I had not imagined he knew how to. He cross-referenced names. He traced transactions. He did what was necessary. I feel the memory of that discovery like a cold burn, because I know the precise way he must have read the line that made me nauseous. If he leaves me, he loses everything. I cannot hear the words without imagining my household as a chessboard where the lives we thought private are public currency. That thought shames me more than anything I have done. I told myself I had been clever. I told myself I had been pragmatic. I told myself David would remain the innocent spouse who would understand. That was a coward's fantasy. When he confronted me, or when he staged the moment I was least prepared for it, I was humiliated in a way only the public can accomplish. He walked into the bistro where Marcus and I and Catherine and those other women sat, laughing with itches under our skin, and he did not bluster. He did not plead. He walked with a composure that was colder than any scorn. He had Maria with him, Jake's friend, or some ploy I would later understand as a social engineering play, and he placed my black lace underwear on the table next to my salad. It is a humiliating image to replay because the humiliation felt biblical. People around us decide whether to be shocked or entertained. Catherine's face tightened into a grimace that became a map of her calculations rearranging themselves. Marcus' polite smile faltered like a perfectly cut soup briefly stained by shadow. When he whispered, without theatrics, "I moved our investments this morning," I felt the floor tilt under my feet in a way I cannot properly translate. He knew. He had reason, evidence. He used domestic language, investments, as a weapon, and it cut deeper than any accusation of moral failure. I should have been enraged. I should have stormed. I instead felt a raw, keening sort of fear because the man whose trust one had been eroding had become a strategist. I had taught him by omission how to be underestimated. I had told myself his silence was weakness, and now it had transmuted into something pivotal. The revelation made me small. The consequence made me vulnerable in a way corporate approval never could be. After that, the escalation felt inevitable. I left a photograph under our door, my name written in block letters, returning a kind of threat like those he must have received. The envelope inside held a picture that teased a new level of danger. I realized then that being a piece of someone else's power game makes you a target to people who feel threatened. I had wanted power, and then felt panic when the machinery I had stepped into showed teeth. He called Jake. The presence of that man, gritty, practical, familiar with bruises and things that are settled with force, was disorienting. Jake looks like he belongs to another era, a bartender with a boxing gym in back, a man who drinks motor oil which smells like coffee, a presence who knows the price of things. He listened to David, slipped on his own reading glasses, and the strategy began to take form in their words like a map of retribution. I watched in horror and a perverse, guilty curiosity as more pieces fit. He reached out to Margaret, Marcus' wife, who had long been assembling her own dossier and who greeted us like a queen whose patience had finally been rewarded with an ally. In that strange meeting, tea poured like diplomacy. Evidence spread with a surgeon's precision. Something uncanny happened. I found myself standing in the center of the room and seeing with a clarity I had not experienced since the first blush of an affair. I had become usable. In one of the most brutal ironies of my life, I was an asset in a counterplan, someone whose humiliation could become the tool for bigger justice. To be useful, in that sense, is humbling and lethal. Margaret's smile was not warm, it was efficient. When she said, "I like you, David. I think we're going to work very well together," I felt my stomach flip at my own name being used as currency in a ledger I hadn't fully anticipated joining. We planned, and planning is a strange aphrodisiac for someone who had started to believe she was unmoored. The charity gala was the obvious stage. 500 people whose reputations were neat and vulnerable, crystal chandeliers and white tablecloths, and the soft, collective vanity of charitable giving. Marcus would be charming, performative, and convinced that his reputation would protect him. That faith in his own untouchability made him careless, and there is nothing more satisfying than watching arrogance be its own undoing. Still, when the lights dimmed and the screen behind him flickered to the footage and audio prepared to dismantle him, I felt a swelling so complex I could not name it. There were parts of the night where I was simply a participant, David in a tuxedo near the back, Tom documenting, Robert handling financial forensics, Frank coordinating press, James playing his political role, and I watched the theater of it all, the economy of release, the way the room shifted from celebration to revelation in a matter of seconds. The FBI did not burst in with a drumbeat. They walked through the doors with quiet authority and escorted Marcus away. The moment when he met my eyes as they led him off the stage, and something like respect, an awful, hollow version of it, glinted there, I realized what Predator looks like when he meets someone who managed to outwit him. After the dust settled, and the SEC and the media had done their work, the tallies were both brutal and precise. Marcus faced years behind bars. Catherine's career imploded. The company's stock cratered. The victims who had been used as currency began to reconstruct their lives. Vanessa, my name now spoken in tones I recognized as both accusation and pity, surfaced briefly, bargaining for leniency. She was counseled to cooperate. I saw the desperation in her face when she realized she had been disposable to them all along. And I watched myself as if from afar. The woman who had traded trust for status, who had thought that being seen by powerful men meant she had arrived. I had been willing to be a tool in a world where tools are wielded without choice. I had allowed my identity to dissolve into someone else's appetite for novelty and prestige. I had justified small compromises with big visions until vision blurred into complicity. The life after the initial unraveling is not simple. There are quiet mornings where I wake and feel the absence of our previous domestic choreography like an ache. I am not naive enough to think if I say I am sorry things would be undone. There are legal consequences that I had to accept. I testified. I told truths that stung like cleansing salt. I traded my career for probation and the breath of a life that was still possible. It is bitter and necessary. The other consequence, the one that sits quietest and most constant in me, is the realization that David is no longer the man I thought he was. He used what I had given him, seemingly trivial trust and apparent docility, and became a strategist. He turned the ledger I helped build into a weapon. He did not seek to ruin for the thrill of it. He sought to correct, to cast light into a dark, corrupt network. He succeeded in a way I both admire and resent. My jealousy, if I allow myself to name it, is not of his power but of the righteous clarity he attained, the sharp, cold edge of someone who had been wronged and then found a way to make the world account. There are nights when I imagine the path not taken. I stand on the threshold between the woman who loved a steady, kindly man and the woman who wanted power, and I ache for the simplicity of the earlier life. But there is a complexity now I cannot escape. I am the sum of choices that have weight. I am the living calculus of the world we inhabited. Sometimes when I put the lipstick on, I think of the woman I used to be, soft, trusting, maybe naive, and I know she would be ashamed of the things I allowed. But the woman who is left knows too much. She knows how fragile reputations are. She knows how hunger mutates into complicity when you mistake being wanted for being seen. I have lost much. I have gained clarity. Those are not equal. They do not feel equal. In the end, there is a terrible, lonely satisfaction to being part of a correction. The city breathes differently. People rebuild. Lives that were bent by greed straighten with care. The cost to me is steep. A career gone, relationships severed, the moral ledger I kept folded into the evidence I delivered. I do not believe there is a lesson that keeps neatly in a single sentence. I know only that I am now someone who must carry all of it, a woman who painted her lips to look formidable and then watched the inferno of her life burn because she had traded truth for a dangerous kind of power. I am left with the small acts that redeem in ways that are not public, apologies I never learned to craft, mornings I spend in repair, listening more than speaking, letting the silence of my past mistakes be a caution rather than a roadmap. Sometimes I trace the memory of the Bentley's engine and the way Marcus leaned close and told me I was brilliant. Sometimes I replay David dropping my underwear on a plate and whispering about investments and feel the hot, horrific clarity of exposure. Sometimes I wake in the quiet and think of Margaret, turned ally, and the way she poured tea, as if she had finally found a friend who would do the things she herself could not. The mosaic is ugly and glittering at once. There is no absolution. There is only accountability and the slow, imperfect work of living. The lipstick remains on my lips as I step out into a world that knows me differently now. I do not ask for forgiveness. I seek to be better by the only metric that matters to me now, that others do not suffer for my choices. If that is a meager redemption, I will take it.